Oh, let me turn the sound down a little bit. Okay, you're listening to Revolution Radio, which is a listener-supported station. There's two studios running 24 hours a day. Each studio, everybody who's here is a volunteer, and we run on donations. So if you do have $5 that you can spare, or $10 you can spare, or $5 a month you can spare, then there's an option to set up a monthly donation at revolution.radio. It keeps the studios running, and it's very much appreciated. There's some good stuff on these studios, I tell you. I've been listening to the archives over the last couple of days because I've had some time off work, and there is some very inventive, very incisive, very inspiring in its own way, and also thought provoking in its own way material. Everybody's got their own style. Some people are direct and do the news. Some people do more philosophical stuff, and there's conversations that go in all sorts of directions. But you'll find something that you like. I can almost guarantee you'll find something that you like. You'll find things that you don't like as well. But that's why free speech is important, because everybody's got the right to say it the way they see it. That's part of the reason that I'm here, is I've got some points of view that are unusual and less mainstream than your average. So I needed somewhere to go that would let me speak in the way that I speak, and Revolution Radio does that. And they were very welcoming when I arrived. They were very supportive when I arrived. So I'm quite happy to support what they're doing and encourage other people to support what they're doing. So back to today now. I had a conversation with a friend of mine yesterday in a pub, in a bar called The Bank. We were sat talking about a lot of his previous career was in the media, in music, television specifically, and he likes his Monty Python. So we were talking about that. He met Spike Milligan. He got Spike Milligan involved in a show that he was doing about 40 years ago. We're talking about, and he's met lots of people. So he was telling me lots of stories. Uh, a story about interviewing Bette Davis, who made him tea. Bette Davis playing up the English loving of tea. So she made him tea while they were interviewing her, which is a good thing, I think, and a phenomenal thing for a woman of that kind of style and that kind of status to just be welcoming and curious and open to having a conversation with a guy from the northeast of England, for a TV show that she's probably had never heard of because it had only just started at that point. And I did promise him at one point a couple of months ago or a month ago that I would play a Monty Python sketch on the radio for him. Well, not for him, but he suggested it, and that's a good idea because it's a very amusing piss take of the British way of life and the German approach and the conflict that goes on with it. So this is a sketch called Mr. Hilter. It's a Monty Python sketch, I think from the very early 70s. It gives John Cleese a chance to use his German accent. So we'll just play a little bit of that. It's about 8 minutes long. Here we go. It's set in a boarding house. let's try again. I never seem to get this right. Don't know what's going on with the share screen. Let's switch it off and switch it on again. Here we go. Let's see. Everything's supposed to be working, but it doesn't ever work according to plan. Never mind. Let's start again. I'm already 4 minutes in. So let's just play the beginning of it.
Very nice.
Well, you must be tired. It's a long drive from Coventry, isn't it?
Yes, well, we usually reckon on 5.5 hours, and it took us 6 hours and 53 minutes with a 25-minute wait at Frampton Costrell to stretch our legs. Only we had to wait half an hour to get on the M5 near Droitwich.
Really?
Yes, then there was a 3-mile queue just before Bridgewater on the A38. Only normally we come round on the B3339 just before Bridgewater, you see.
Really?
Yes, but this time we decided to risk it because they're always saying they're going to widen it there.
Are they?
Yes, well, just there by the intersection where the A372 joins up. There's plenty of room to widen it there. There's only the grass verges. They could get another 6 feet knocked down that hospital. Then we took the coast road through Williton and got all the Taunton traffic on the A358 from Crocombe and Stockenburg.
Well, you must be dying for a cup of tea.
Well, wouldn't say no.
Well,
not if it's warm and wet.
Well, come on in the lounge. I'm just about to serve afternoon tea.
Very nice.
Come on in, Mr. and Mrs. Johnson. Oh, this is Mr. and Mrs. Phillips.
Good afternoon.
It's their 3rd year with us. We can't keep you away, can we? And over here is Mr. Hilter.
Hi. Good afternoon.
Planning a little excursion, are we, Mr. Hilter?
Yeah, we make a little, das ist Rückweise Bewegung. Hike.
Hiking.
We make a little hike for Biddeford.
Oh, well, you'll be wanting the A39 there. No, you've got the wrong map there. This is Stalingrad. You want the Ilfracombe and Barnstable section.
I'm Reginald. You have the wrong map here, you silly old leg before wicked English person.
Sorry, mein Führer, I did not... Mein dicky old chum.
Lucky Mr. Johnson pointed that out, eh? You wouldn't have had much fun in Stalingrad, would you? I said you wouldn't have had much fun in Stalingrad, would you?
Not much fun in Stalingrad, no.
No, I'm sorry, I didn't introduce you. This is Ron Ribbentrop.
Oh, not Von Ribbentrop, eh?
Nine! Oh, no, different other chap. No, I in Somerset am being born. Von Ribbentrop is born in Gotthardstrasse 46, Düsseldorf, West 8. So they say.
And this is the quiet one, Mr. Bimler, Heinrich Bimler.
How do you do that, Squire? Also, I'm not Minehead lad, but I in Peterborough, Lincolnshire House was given birth to. But stay in Peterborough, Lincolnshire House all during war, owing to nasty running sores. I was unable to go in the streets, play football, or go to Nuremberg. I am a retired window cleaner and pacifist without doing war crimes. I'm very glad England win World Cup, Bobby Charlton, Martin Peters, and eating lots of chips and fish and toad in the Horlies and Dundee cake on Piccadilly line. Don't you know, old chap? And was head of Gestapo for 10 years. No, 5 years. No, 9. Was not head of Gestapo at all. I make jokes.
Oh, Mr. Bimler, you do have us on. Oh, excuse me, I must just go and answer that.
How long are you down here for, Mr. Hilter? Just a fortnight.
Trying to ask that? You aspire something? Get over against the world, British pig! You're going to die!
Take it easy, Dickie, old chum.
I'm sorry, Mr. Johnson. He's a bit on edge. He hasn't slept since 1945.
Shut your cake hole, you Nazi!
Cool it, Fiona Cat.
Oh, the fun we have.
Haven't I seen him on the television?
Nine, oh, no.
Television doctor?
No.
Telephone, Mr. Hilter. It's that nice Mr. McGoring from the Bell and Compasses.
Ah.
He says he's found a place where you can hire bombers by the hour.
If he opens his big mouth again, it's lampshade time!
Shut up! Hire bombers by the hour. What a laugh he is, that Scottish person. But old Norman.
He's on the telephone the whole time nowadays.
In business, is he?
Soon, baby.
Of course, it's his big day Thursday. They've been planning it for months.
What happens then?
Oh, it's the North Minehead by-election. Mr. Hilter's standing as a national socialist candidate. He's got wonderful plans for Minehead.
It becomes a little bit too visual at this point for the radio, but you get the idea. It's I like Monty Python. I grew up with Monty Python, so I'm quite happy to play Monty Python clips until the day I die or the day that I stop doing the radio show, which would probably be the day I die. So we're nearly 20 minutes in. I haven't really said anything very much about anything yet. So how's my week been? As I said, I spent a few hours in the bar with Jeff yesterday, and it was fun. In the end, I got told to put my mask on a couple of times because you've got to wear a mask if you're not sitting down at the table, and it's table service now. This is how the UK, the north of the UK is. In my particular area, it's local lockdown rules. They're slightly different in different areas, but so you can't get away with going to the toilet without putting a mask on as soon as you stand up from your table. So that makes it less likely that I'm going to be in a bar anytime soon, unless it's just for one beer. I'm not really a man who's all that interested in wearing a mask from the table to the toilet. But I put up with it because I was talking to Jeff, and the bar kind of filled up, and everybody seems to just be complying with the rules, which is fine. But the bar staff, were just repeating what they'd been told, which is everybody has to wear a mask if they're standing up. If they're at the table, you don't have to, but if you're standing up, then you do. As I say, I'm not a fan of this kind of invasion of personal space, really. It's not my thing. But I'm trying to keep away from politics on here, and it's not easy when there's all sorts of stuff going on in the world. So the way to just focus on being, which is something I've been covering the last couple of weeks, being plus a quality, or being plus a description. So to get back to just being without any kind of description or without any kind of quality is kind of a focus on breathing thing. It's to just let your mind settle, get into a kind of quiet space, let your mind settle and focus on your breath. That's how I do it anyway. It's what makes sense to me, and then I can start to build up the qualities that I want. Last week I spent some time work. I've had back pain and neck and shoulder pain, just tension. It's muscle tension more than anything. But I was sitting down working on that on Thursday, and I took out a lot of muscle tension down my spine and across my shoulders. I lifted it out just in my mind, just kind of focus on a T covering my back and shoulders, lift that out, turn it into a ball of energy, spin it around in the opposite direction to the way it was originally spinning when it turns into a ball of energy. Let it wobble, move it around a bit, change the colour of it, the texture of it, the kind of the energetic feel of it, so that it can't go back to being muscle tension. And then you kind of put it back in where it used to be, and it sets off a process of healing. And what I did was put in the quality of humour, because the world's in a serious place, but the only way to get through it is to see it as a humorous situation. I think, at least that's what I'm doing. I take it quite seriously, but you've got to have a sense of humour with it. You've just got to laugh at it, because if you don't, you just end up in a dystopian science fiction movie, because the world's turned into They Live, or Soylent Green, or something like that, or Logan's Run even. And I like those movies. I like dystopian science fiction movies from the 70s. But I don't want to live in one. And the only way to not live in it is to make it a comedy rather than a tragedy. That's that's the kind of psychological shift that you've got to make, is from tragedy to comedy. So I'm playing this for fun now. I'm taking the mickey out of people, and I'm exaggerating their qualities and just laughing and making stuff up and just having fun with it and free flowing. That's what I was doing in the bar yesterday. It's kind of what I'm doing today, although the screen share doesn't always work first time. But that's life. Life doesn't go along without technical hitches. There's always going to be something, whether it's somebody telling you to wear a mask, or whether it's something not working with your laptop or your computer or your microphone or whatever it is. And it doesn't matter really. It's just a thing that happens. It's just like pain is just a sensation ultimately. And if you focus on pain, it becomes a tragedy. If you focus on sensation, you can turn it into a comedy because you've made it neutral. So we go from tragedy to neutral to comedy. And I'm just making this up as I go along, so, but it does kind of make sense. And there's enough tragedy in the world without me adding to it. So my little bit of addition to the world is going to be a comedy. It's going to be humour. And it's like when I was talking to Jeff yesterday, I know by the conversations I've had with him previously that when he gets onto the subject of who he was talking to when he was working in the media, his eyes light up. And this is a guy who's had some quite serious health issues. But if you get him talking, use a little bit of what is called narrative medicine. Get him talking about things that he enjoyed when they were happening. Obviously, he was under pressure because he was working as a producer, as a director, as a researcher, whatever time period it was. But he got to meet a lot of people, and if you get him talking about that, his eyes light up. And at one point, I was just guffawing. I was just releasing a whole lot of energy, and he starts laughing along with me, and it lightens everything. It just lifts everything. Everything that I've been carrying around, you can lighten it up. You can lighten it up with humour. So that's the way I'm kind of approaching the world at the moment. It's not an easy thing to do consistently, and I still do fall into taking it all seriously and taking it kind of as the dystopian science fiction movie that it looks like when you're walking down the street, and it looks like when you're going shopping, and it certainly looked like in the bar yesterday. But it's like you can turn the bar situation into the bar in the first Star Wars movie, which was just full of aliens, and it's more or less that. It's a weird situation. But if you turn the mask into a kind of uh, a puppet thing for one thing, because it looks like if you're talking through a mask, it looks like you're a puppet. There's no human distinctive features on there, so it turns people into part of the dark crystal, because everybody turns into a puppet. You can play with the things in your imagination and make them into something else. And I tend to do that at work quite a lot as well. It's what keeps me going in my workplace. So we've got windows overlooking a beer warehouse, an alcohol warehouse, but it's real ales mainly. So the casks come in, the barrels come in on a Tuesday afternoon, and I call that Terminator Delivery Day. I've turned it into a science fiction movie, and it's just a lorry pulling up with some barrels. But in my head, it's a rebel base in an Arnold Schwarzenegger movie, and it keeps me amused for for Tuesday afternoon. Or sometimes it turns into a combination of Terminator and Star Wars, The Empire Strikes Back or whatever. So depending on how the clouds are and how the sun is, you can turn the whole thing into a rebel base and a battle going on in the background, and I just used my imagination. So the theme on this show has been imagination creates reality, and that's what I tend to do. It's the way that my head works. So I'm going to just have a look and see and give people a bit of a name check in the chat room, because it's something I like to do. So where are we? Visitor list. Here we go. So at the moment we've got Mer Bailey, Tootsie, Eagle Flower, Fact or Theory. We've got Mona, Gino 2017. We've got Monster 383. We've got Captain Fred, Comet, Lady Horse, J Bear, Jimmy Jean a little while ago. That takes us to last night, really. Popsicle Toes are still in there. Boy Solomon's in there. So I was speaking to him, I was chatting to him before we came on air. So everybody else as well. Seri Sunflower, Omega Logos. I'll go back another 12 hours or so. Alaska Man, Hummingbird, Tones, Batsman, May Street 139. Harry the Busker's in there. That takes us back a full 24 hours. So hello to everybody. Thanks for supporting the station. We need your support. And just being in the chat room is supporting. Mr. Rose in the chat room as well. All right, so let's go back to Pierre Grimes talking about the one and the many, because we're about 30 minutes in, so it's about time we did that. The one and the many. In the right order, Pierre Grimes. And many. I'll try and go for the same video that we were using last week, which is exploration of the one, I think it might have been. And I'm about halfway through it, so I'm just going to let it play. If you want to go back to this and listen to the full version, it's an hour and a half, so I'm not going to be able to play an hour and a half. I can just dip in and out of it. I'll dip in for a quarter of an hour. It's on the Post Nothingness channel on YouTube. This is Pierre Grimes on Plotinus's exploration of the one. This is a different video to last week, but it's on the same subject. So we'll just go for it.
Beings from one another, it's not spatial distance, but their own differences and diversities. When there's no difference between them, they're mutually present. Now, the one doesn't contain any difference. It's always present, and we're always present to it, whether when we need no longer to contain difference. As the one does not contain any difference, it's always present, and we're always present to it. When we no longer contain difference, the one doesn't aspire to us or move around us, we aspire and move around it. Actually, we move always around it, but we don't know how to look. We're like a chorus grouped about a conductor who allow their attention to be distracted by the audience. If, however, they were to turn towards the conductor, they would sing as they should and would really be with him. We are always around the one. If we were not, we would dissolve and cease to exist, yet our gaze does not remain fixed upon the one. That's our task. Huh? We dance and inspire dance around it. Well, goes back to the soul for a moment. Soul, then filled with divinity, light, is pregnant. This is its starting point. It's goal. It's its starting point because it's from the world above that it proceeds. It is its goal because in the world above is the good to which it aspires. Further proof that the good is in the realm above, love. It's innate in our souls. The soul, different from divinity, has sprung from it. Soul must needs love. When it is in the realm above, its love is heavenly. Every soul is an Aphrodite. It is suggested in the myth of Aphrodite's birth at the same time as that of Eros. Now, love, where does it go? How great then is its bliss? Can be conceived by those who've tasted it. They think of earthly unions and love, marking well the joy felt by the lover who succeeds in obtaining his desires. But this is love directed to the mortal shadows. Only in the world beyond does the real object of our love exist, the only one with which we can unite ourselves, in which we can have a part, and which we can intimately possess without being separated by the barriers of flesh. Now, anyone who has had this experience knows what I mean, knows what I'm talking about. He will know that the soul lives another kind of life, higher, as it advances towards the one, as it reaches it, as it shares in it. The soul recognizes the presence of the dispenser of true life, recognizes it as that. Needs nothing more. Then, of it and of itself, the soul has all the vision that may be. Now luminous, now filled with intellectual light, become pure light, subtle, weightless. It's become divine. It's part of the eternal that is beyond becoming. It's like a flame. Back to this. Oh. 10. Well, why doesn't it stay there? Because it has not yet detached itself from things here below. Yet a time will come when it will uninterruptedly have vision, when it will no longer be bothered by a body. Therefore, all right, now we're going back to it. When the contemplative looks upon himself in the act of contemplation, he will see himself to be like its object. He feels himself to be united to himself in the way that an object is united to itself. That is, he'll experience himself as simple. Actually, we shouldn't say he will see. What he sees is not seen, not distinguished, not represented as a thing apart. The man who obtains the vision becomes, as it were, another being. He ceases to be himself, retains nothing of himself. Absorbed in the beyond, he's one with it. Like a center coincidental with another center. While the centers coincide, they're one. It's only in this sense that we can speak of the one as something separate. It's very difficult to describe this vision. How can we represent it? And how can we represent it as different from what what seemed while we were contemplating it not to be other than ourselves. This is doubtless is what is back of the injunction of the mystery religions which prohibit revelation to the uninitiated. The divine is not expressible, so the initiate is forbidden to speak of it to anyone who has not been fortunate enough to have beheld it himself. The vision, the man who saw becomes identical to what he saw. Hence he doesn't see, he's rather one with it. If he can only preserve a memory of what he had seen while thus absorbed, he'd possess within himself an image of what it was. In that state he had attained unity. Nothing within him or without affects diversity. When he makes his descent, when he makes his ascent, there was within him no disturbance, no anger, no emotion, desire, reason, or thought. Actually, such as an ascent, he's no longer himself. Filled with the divine, but yet he's still solitary at rest. Not returning to this side or that. He was at utter rest, having, so to say, become rest itself. It's in this state he busies himself no longer even with the beautiful. He has risen above beauty, and he's passed beyond even the choir of virtues. You have to leave beauty itself, and that's the stage he's talking about. You have to leave that vision. What is it like? He's like one who, penetrating the innermost sanctuary of a temple, leaves the temple images behind. Now, they'll be the first objects to strike his view coming out of the sanctuary. After this contemplation and communion, there's not with an image or a statue, but what they represent. So when he comes out of this, what does he return to? This. Because they're the first objects to strike his view coming out of the sanctuary. Such experience is hardly a vision. It's seeing of quite a different kind. It's self-radiance. It's a pure simplification, self-abandonment, a striving for union or repose. That is to say, one sees in the sanctuary. Anyone who tries to see in any other way will see nothing. Now, it's by the use of these riddles that the wise among the soothsayers expressed in riddles how the divinity is seen. Now, a wise priest reading the riddle will, once arrived in the realm beyond, achieve a true vision of the sanctuary. One who has not yet arrived and knows the sanctuary is invisible, is the source and principle of everything. That person, right? He will know. Know what? That by hypothesis is hypothesis known. Pardon me. I always do that. He will know that by hypostasis is hypostasis seen. And that like the alone joins the like. He'll leave aside nothing of the divine the soul is capable of acquiring. If his vision is incomplete, he'll attend to its completion. Completion is the one itself. It's not in the soul's nature to attain to utter nothingness. Falling into evil, it falls into nothingness. When it reverses direction, it arrives not at something different, but at itself. Thus, when it is not in anything, it is in nothing but itself. Yet, when it is in itself alone and not in being, that's the supreme. We then transcend being by virtue of the soul with which we are united. Now, if you look upon yourself in this state, you'll find yourself an image of the one. If you rise beyond yourself, As an image rising to its model, you'll reach the goal of your journey. When you fall from this vision, you will, by arousing the virtue within yourself and by remembering the perfection that you possess, regain that likeness. And through virtue, rise to the excellence, and through wisdom, attain to the one. Such is the life of divinity and of the divine and blessed men. Detachment from all things here below, scorn for all earthly pleasures. It's the flight of the lone to the alone. So that's what I wanted to take you through. And now,
All right, so that's another 15 minutes or so of Pierre Grimes talking about Plotinus's view of the human soul and the one. So it's Neoplatonism essentially. Plotinus was around about 300 AD, and he was born in North Africa, in Alexandria, and eventually ended up in Rome. And he was a tutor to high-ranking senators and high-ranking officials' children. And he also looked after their money as well, I think. So they trusted him. And I'm not surprised they trusted him, because he obviously had some serious insight on some kind of mystical level. And he's talking there about remembering. You know, remembering's an important thing in Platonism. There's a passage in the Meno, the dialogue, Meno, where a slave boy's being encouraged to remember how to do mathematics. Socrates talks him through a process, and he remembers how to do mathematics that he's never been taught. So there's a principle in Platonism which is remembering, and Plotinus is talking about remembering the soul and remembering the one, which is remembering where you came from, remembering beyond the human level to the soul level, which is, in Plato, the soul is described as a chariot drawn by a horse with a chariot, two horses with a charioteer. So it's in the tarot. Tarot deck's got a chariot in it. Tarot comes from a lot of Platonic ideas, a lot of ideas that were around, presumably in North Africa. Hermetic ideas, Platonism, Neoplatonism, they're described in the tarot. So however far back the tarot goes, the ideas go back further that are being illustrated, and the qualities that are associated with the human soul as the horses are appetite and ambition. So appetite and ambition are drawing the chariot, but they're controlled by reason. Reason is the charioteer. It's a very simple image, but it's an image that I like because people get simple images. And there's only three things to remember. You can remember horses, you can remember a chariot and a charioteer. That's four things to remember in this image. So appetite, ambition, and reason. So if reason is directing, appetite is desire, ambition is the need for status, the need for social recognition. So reason is the quality that drives those things in a positive direction. And reason will take you internal at some point. So when you've achieved your social status, or when you've given up on achieving your social status, one of the two, you start to look inside at some point around midlife, around about sometime between 30 and 40 maybe, or between 40 and 50, or maybe a bit later. You start to look inside and look for your own answers. rather than accepting the answers that are given to you by society. And I started doing that in my early 30s, mid 30s, which I always knew I was going to do. For some reason, I always knew that I was going to wake up around about the year 2000. I was expecting I've always been interested in the eclipse in 2000, which was visible in the UK. It was always a key part of my life, even before it happened. It was always going to be a symbol of me waking up. And I woke up a couple of years before that, but started to develop an interest in Reiki and crystal healing and flower essences when I got to about 32. Did a little bit of Buddhist meditation, went on a Buddhist retreat for a week, dropped a lot of baggage from my childhood, started to work on a lot of past life issues, past life trauma, particularly death trauma, and mostly death trauma actually. But it's all symbolic. It's all symbolic. You don't have to believe that you've lived 1,000 times to work on past life trauma, because if you're carrying trauma from your current life, that symbolism will get to it. So if you've got a sense of being killed in battle, or being burned as a witch, or being burned as a heretic, or being tortured by the Spanish Inquisition, or whatever it is, it's a symbol that your mind's giving you to work with trauma. Doesn't matter whether it's real or not, particularly, because it just tells you that there's some trauma there. And if you can't work directly with childhood trauma, it'll come out indirectly. And I spent a lot of time working with Reiki, particularly in the violet flame, just transmuting trauma. Spent a couple of years transmuting trauma when I got the chance, and I wasn't working at that point, so I had the time to do it. When I circled back later on, about 3-4 years ago, started looking at present life trauma. So looking at my current situation more directly, my current lifetime more directly, and working with issues from my childhood, birth trauma even. I spent a month working through the first year of my life, from conception through the 9 months of pregnancy, through the first year of my life. And one of the things that I circle back to in these shows is I had a measles when I was about 1 year and 3 months old, and it affected my life profoundly because I wasn't old enough to understand what was going on. So I've taken a measles infection and interpreted it as a threatening world. So if the whole world is threatening, that then sat in my subconscious, and it's informed all of my decisions and all of my perceptions of the world until I worked out what it was and I cleared it. So I don't know how useful this is for people, but if you've got any experience with healing or with energy psychology or with those types of things, it'll be useful, because you can look for whatever it is in the first couple of years of your life or the first 5 years of your life that's been sat in your subconscious and has given you an outlook on life that suggests incorrectly or correctly that the world is hostile. In my case, when I got rid of that assumption, then the world was less hostile. It sometimes can still be a bit off-putting or a bit aggressive or a bit critical or whatever, but it's not a blanket perception of the world as hostile, which is what that assumption gave me. So anyway, that's an insight that I wanted to share, and it's an insight that I'll keep sharing because I think it's useful. If anybody's got Reiki experience or violet flame experience, if you go back in the archives, you'll find the shows where I was doing Emotional Freedom Technique and the Violet Flame. I think there's a couple of those in the archives. And they're worth listening to because they'll take you through processes they'll help you to release trauma. And I'll let you know where you can find me online because there's a few different places. I've set up a Discord server called Free Association Radio Show Live, and I'm recording shows there that don't go out on the radio, but I'm recording content for a radio station that I set up a year and a half ago, which is at radioprojects.co.uk. So I'm adding to that as I go along, and then there's other websites. This radio show's got Free Association radioshow.com associated with it, which is where I post research for this particular hour. So there's a lot of different places you can find me. If you want to have a chat on Skype, then just look for Open Philosopher, and we'll have a conversation there. I don't want to make this complicated by giving people 5 websites to look at. So that's enough for now. If you're interested in having a conversation or coming on air on the show, send me a chat message and a contact request on Skype, and we can have a conversation. If you want to have a conversation on air, we can do that. If you've got something you want to work on, you want to let go of, we can do something on air, just as an example for other people, and without being too specific about it or too personal about it. We'll just take your general situation, and I'll turn it into a meditation or a visualization, and I'll do something on air for you. And it's part of my process to share what I do. It might be part of your process to take part in something on the show. You never know. It's up to you. I want to make it a little bit more interactive as we move into the new year, so I'm just kind of encouraging people to reach out and connect. And I'll reach out and connect with a few people along the way as well and see what we can do. All right, let's take a moment just to let you know that revolution.radio is where you'll find the chat room. And there's a button there that will let you make a donation if you've got a few spare dollars or a few spare pounds. You can set up a monthly donation. It keeps the servers running, keeps everything moving. I like the archives because I work during the weeks, but there's a lot of, as I've said, there's a lot of good shows in here. I found about 6 hours worth of archives that I've got to work through just from McDonald in the morning. There's 6 hours worth of material there that I want to listen to just from one show. So I don't have time to do everything with it, but I can catch up on things that I'm interested in. All right, let's have a look at the chat room and see if we can get a conversation going there for the last few minutes. I know Boy Solomon's listening. Or was listening. And the chat room started to liven up. There's more people in there now, 26 people in there. And as we move towards noon on the West Coast. So I'm here at 11 a.m. on a Saturday morning on Studio B at revolution.radio or on TuneIn or whichever app you use to get your radio stations. You'll find me there. I look forward to your company next week, and I'll see you then.